Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
And it's a real pleasure for me as a longtime fan to be sitting here with Aaron Gray.
Here with Larry Hama.
We're talking with Kevin J. Anderson, best-selling author.
Mr. Neil Adams.
I am here with David Prince.
Axel Alonso, editor.
Shadow Stevens.
And Dallas Comic-Con with John Delancey.
With Tom King.
Kevin Conroy.
Free comic book day.
Denise Crosby.
PopCon Pop Expo.
Here on location at Star Wars Celebration.
Sci-Fi Expo, talking for our second time with Gil Gerard.
Wichita, Kansas at Time Eddy.
Producer David Gerald.
I've got Eric Flint.
Are here at Smallville Comic Con.
Wizard World St. Louis.
VillageCon in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Michael Lombardi.
We were talking with Alan Dean.
Quincy Allen.
Suzanne Lambden.
Of Starlog Magazine, Mr. Kerry Oakwood.
Chris Sami.
Landon Dave Schwartz.
Mano Intirami.
Jason Aaron.
This is Sci-Fi for Me, your portal to the science fiction multiverse.
The Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content. Tune in and subscribe to Comic Talk with Pops Van Zant on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David J. Pedersen.
Hello. Get the shirt off.
How are you, David? Folks, if you've not read David J. Pedersen's stuff, first of all, what's wrong with you? Secondly, if you are geeks, nerds, people who read science fiction and fantasy, you know us, you know who you are. And if you like, Margaret Weiss, Tracy Hickman, Dragonlance, that kind of thing, this guy, get this guy's books. Start with the link below and channel backwards. But David, it's been a long time since you've been on the show. Even longer.
Has it been a couple years even?
Yeah,
since Entriss came out, because this book took me a little while to write. And your timing was perfect to talk about doing another show. So thank you for having me.
Always glad to have you on. I would have you on every month if you were putting out a new book every month. But
yeah, that would be nice. That would indeed be nice. Not quite that prolific.
Well, just get that Chat GPT thing going.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? I mean,
it is.
Yeah, it's there's a lot it can do, but there's a lot that it can't do.
I've been less impressed with the writing AI than I had been with the art AI, and probably because I'm not an artist and I am a writer, so I
sure
more inherently see the weaknesses in the writing part of it.
I've seen it and I've played with it a little bit. I think it's improved since GPT 3.5 came out. But I also think that just letting it go, saying, write me a story about Critical Blast. It's not going to do a fantastic job. You have to, I think it has to be babied and curated. And at that point, is it easier than writing? I'm not sure, or more efficient for that matter. What I do find it can do really well, or pretty well, is like blog posts, short things, nonfiction, snippets, and marketing copy is pretty good.
And I believe it's plagiarism proof, in that it checks to make sure it hasn't been written before.
Well, you'll find out if it's not.
Yes, you will. Hey, you copied our stuff. It's interesting because I saw somebody write show what it had written about their podcast.
Yes.
And I said, hey, write something about my podcast. And I saw so much of the same verbiage.
Yeah. Yeah, you really have to put in a lot of prompts and ideas and thoughts. And like I say, at that point, try writing 500 words or 1,000 words and getting 1,000 words out of, one of the AI apps and that connect to GPT 3.5 and see if it's faster, see if it's more efficient, see if, it's really, maybe you're not a writer and the writing is better than you would do. And I could see that. Not you, but I mean, people in general.
Oh yeah, definitely me.
I see that there's a purpose behind it and it's just going to improve. So it's something we, I guess, have to kind of get used to a little bit.
They're here.
Yes.
We knew they were coming for our jobs in the automotive industry and in burger flipping, because there's kiosks that do that now. Never thought they were coming for the arts. But
it's surprising. I mean, on one side, I think it's really neat to see what they can do and how it improves. On the other side, no one wants to lose their job to a computer, robot, technology, etc. And it's not good for people. It's not good for the economy, in my opinion, because if people are not working, they're not buying stuff. But
we'll all end up like the people in Wall-E.
Well, they're well taken care of. That's not such a bad idea.
Yeah, we'll make good pets. So, wow. Just to set the stage for what you've done. Was Angst your first published work, or had you done
absolutely? So, I had started a couple books that did not, even back in high school, I started writing my first book, and nothing really. They didn't sit right and they didn't feel right, and they and I had a lot to learn about writing. And Angst, I was my first book. It's a fantasy. It's a kind of, if you haven't read it, it's the short term, or the short phrase is, it's a midlife crisis in medieval times.
Yeah.
And
With dragons and all the stuff that comes with
yeah,
that.
it's pretty involved. But the first book is both standalone but leads into the second book, so it's it's it, it's pretty easy read in my opinion, or at least that's what people have told me. Um, but
It
the
flows very well.
Thank you. My wife and I were just talking about that. That like, there's some books that writers write that they have a passion for, or that directors make that they have, their passion project. And I don't know if that's the best place to start with writing and publishing, but that's what I did, and I'm fond of the story. But yeah, that was my first attempt, and I kept going. I took a break after book 4 to write Claude Makes a Friend, and then I finished the Angst series. And then I started writing my first lit RPG fantasy novel, which was Entriss Online, and then followed up with the second book in the series, which is going to be kind of weird, but it's a standalone science fiction novel in that same universe, but it's not a direct sequel. So I'm
Okay.
trying in my best to confuse every reader out there.
It helped that Angst was semi-autobiographical. Yeah, I got a
I don't know
lot
what
of
she's
that.
talking about.
I don't either. But and Dr. Hino, welcome. I guess that's Dr. Hino. It's either that or D Rhino. It's hard to tell. But glad to have you here, sir, or madam, as the case may be. Yeah, and the characters in Angst, I got so attached to them. You might recall you got an email from me as I was heading into a chapter where somebody was not doing well, and I said, "You son of a bitch, you better not."
That is the most flattering thing, is if somebody reaches out and says that something I wrote affected them, that it made them. I I got, like, with Claude Makes a Friend, I got a lot of messages, and I still do today, of people that it impacts their lives, or it's meaningful. With Entriss Online, it's meant to be fun, of course, but there's one we'll call it a cameo, and I'll just leave it at that. And I got a message from a reader just saying, "Ha ha 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 ha," page 94. and I'm like, that was the best thing ever, and that was just fabulous.
I saw it. I was there. Claude Makes a Friend. Yeah, that's another great book for adults. It's a children's book that adults will definitely get a lot out of. Are you still going around schools and talking with that one? I mean,
Yeah. There is a school here in Kansas City in Independence that I visit every year. The teacher very graciously includes me, invites me up there, and I read to the students and talk to them. She just moved to a new school, and at her old school, for her last year there, they had all the grades read the book in grade school. And I was so flattered by that. I mean, that was neat. And for those who haven't read Claude Makes a Friend, it's a fantasy, but it's about how to deal with being bullied. And it takes place in 10 chapters, but it tells the entire story of his life in those 10 chapters. I mean, so it was a fun book to write. It was very meaningful to me, and I'm glad that it's touched people.
I'm not going to say what the ending was because I don't care how old the book is. This one's a spoiler that you've got to hit. But the nature of the last chapter and its relationship to the first chapter and everything we read, like, oh, this is like some of the the best science fiction that's out there, where I can't even describe why, because it'll ruin it if you don't read it. You've got to get that book, folks.
Thank you.
Now, lit RPG.
Yes.
That is still something I have trouble wrapping my head around, because I'm like, yeah, role-playing games are lit. We've known that for years. They're lit AF, as the kids say.
So I actually have done a couple videos on this on my YouTube channel, because I think people are a little gun shy about it. And when they, especially if they don't play like World of Warcraft, or any of those MMORPG type of games, which is a lot of what these types of stories are based on. And you know, basically, if you could imagine, rather than doing a very descriptive battle scene, which is a part of these books, you just say he hit him for 10% of his health. I mean, that's that you can relate to that. You can,
Yeah.
and some of the books get really complicated and deep in the numbers, but most of them don't. Most of them go, he it hit him hard enough that he was, bleeding, and it took 40% of his health, and you're like, okay. So they throw in a little bit numbers, and there's also progression. That's a big part of these stories, where just like in Dungeons and Dragons, or just like in an MMORPG video game, where you level up. And you know that kind of makes sense. It's very similar in real life. You practice something, you get better at it, and you go on to learn the next step of whatever it is you're trying to figure out.
So in a lit RPG session, or yeah, see how I'm
Yeah.
mixing the genres already.
Well, it's a book. I mean, so in the next story.
Yeah, well, in any of them, I mean, is it the characters playing a game and getting sucked into a game, like the opening for Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, or
Yeah.
is it
Well,
described like a game?
okay. That's a good question, because there are a lot of different types, and they all end up in the same place. But the stories I've written so far are VR MMORPG, where they enter in a container, if you will, like Spock's photon torpedo, that from Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3. So they get in these immersion pods, and when they open their eyes, it feels like they are in the on the planet, or in this world.
Okay.
But other stories are, they are teleported to these worlds, or aliens invade and they make the world have game mechanics. I mean, there are all sorts of different yeah, there are all sorts of different spins on it. But then once they arrive, the stories can be a little similar, in the sense that they have these gaming mechanics.
Okay, so I may actually be more familiar with this than I thought. So I'm thinking of things like Sword Art Online, the
Yeah,
anime
very
series.
much so.
Okay, I mean, and
Ready
of course,
Player
Ready
One.
Player One. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are hardcore fans that will argue what lit RPG is and what it isn't, but really, you've got it.
It's evolving, is what it is. It's a new thing.
It is a relatively new thing. Very popular in Russia, and I think that Aileron Kong's kind of kicked it off with the Land series in the United States. And then Ready Player One, didn't hurt visibility for it. And so it's opened the doors for a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have chosen to be writers, a way to express themselves and tell some pretty darn great stories, because it's done in such a different way. They feel comfortable with writing it like that.
So if somebody was more comfortable, I guess, describing what happened at last night's gaming session.
Yeah.
They're telling the story, but they're not, doing the Stephen King method of it.
Well,
and
no,
getting all the
you're
anecdotes.
not saying that. It's not always a matter of tell, don't show. There's a lot of showing too, but there's a little telling that's a part of it when it comes to, the mechanics of it.
Okay.
But it doesn't feel like they're playing a game. It feels like they're living a life, but the normal rules of that life have changed because they have to live by the guidelines of the game.
What are the stakes in the game? I mean, how do you
Death.
keep the tension? Yeah, I was going to say, if you can't die in the game, then there's no tension.
I mean, in my stories, they're VR games, so if they die, something horrible happened. But for some of them, like if aliens invade and they've got to live by these rules, it's probably going to be like an arena,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's not going to end well for everybody.
So if they're going into a pod to do this, it's got to be the future.
Yeah, my stories definitely are.
How
Yeah.
far out is this? I mean, you got to come up with tech now.
Oh yeah, so I call it in the near future. That's how I start each of these books, because I think it's dangerous to say in 2027, because that's just around the corner.
Yeah.
In 3032, when we have flying cars and we get there and there's no flying cars, so in the near
We're past
future, kind of.
we don't even have a hoverboard yet, so
Yeah, exactly. So in the near future kind of covers that. But it's one of the things I've really enjoyed about writing this series, because the Angst series was pure fantasy, and this series is science fiction, and so I've gotten to dabble a little bit in that. Not too much, but um, enough that's been fun, and I've got a technical background, so I've got to leverage that a little bit.
sure.
Uh, and
Me too.
then um, the of course the other thing with Entriss is I got to use a lot of pop culture references, which I didn't get to do with Angst. I did a little bit and snuck some in, but this one was pretty heavy-handed with pop culture, and I loved every second of it.
Now, when you say you're putting pop culture in, are you talking about the made up pop culture of that time or actual pop culture?
Oh no, like movie quotes. Like you
Okay.
would do with your friends. If you're all Marvel movie fans, and you quote Captain America and say, "I could do this all day." That those types of references,
All
that
right.
that people will recognize.
So how do you pull back from that? Because Ready Player One was heavy on that. That's one of the hallmarks of that
Yeah,
story.
absolutely. I did a
And you
little.
don't want to say, "Hey, it's another Ready Player One." When no, it's Interest Online. It's different. It's a different thing.
Oh, it's very different. It is more a part of friendly banter than it is a part of the core storyline. It's a way one of the main characters expresses himself. Is he's a little bit awkward, but he knows movies and movie quotes and stuff, and so he throws them out once in a while. And but yeah, it I didn't write it with the intention of replicating anything Ready Player One did. I mean, it would be too obvious.
Yeah, that would be my concern if I were to try to write something like that, because I would find myself gravitating toward the big magnet that everybody liked.
Yeah.
When you know everybody likes something, give them more of what they like. That's
Yeah, and this is, I mean, it's one of those things that is, in some cases I'd reference, what movie it was from. In other cases, it might be subtle enough that some people would pick it up and some people wouldn't. Um, so but it wasn't a core part of the story. It was just something I got to add in, which I enjoyed.
so what about this new genre? I don't know how new it is, but it's new to me. I know there was Dragonlance Chronicles, that was a game. There was, Magic the Gathering had books, and that was a game, but they weren't
Lit
about the
RPG.
game.
No,
Yeah,
no, they weren't.
they were just set in that world that people were familiar with, and then they were just straight up fantasy.
Yeah.
What drew you to try this out?
Oh gosh, a lot of things. So, one is that I do play video games quite a bit, probably too much, and MMORPGs are a part of that. I mean, I played World of Warcraft like crazy, and now I'm playing a New World from Amazon, and I'm looking forward to games like Ashes of Creation. So, I like those games, and I like the idea of being able to mesh fantasy and science fiction with what I know about those games. And I just thought it sounded fun. And I had a different idea that I haven't seen others do. And I don't want to give anything away, but it was that it was going to be challenging, and I thought that it would add something to the genre if I tried something unique. That's yet to be seen, because Entriss doesn't by itself stand out as terribly unique to the series or to lit RPG. But when the first four books are done, people are going to be like, oh, well, that was different. So
now, Entriss Online, that's not the name of the series, right? Or is it? Is it
the series is Watson's Worlds?
Okay,
and so which implies different worlds. And Watson and several other developers created an AI that's called Deity. That is
it's a little foreboding.
that it's well, I mean, Deity controls everything that happens in these virtual worlds and maintains, manages, keeps them safe from outside, digital threats. And so the three developers broke off and built their own virtual worlds, which became popular, and they sold subscription fees or copies of the game. And Entriss Online was one of them. Colonize Epolis was a different one. And
That's the new one.
Yeah, that's the new one. And they're very different games. Where Entriss Online was, traditional fantasy MMORPG. Colonize Epolis is a kind of a town building game, like Civilizations or SimCity on a smaller scale. But the story is that there is a Colonize Epolis challenge that's sponsored by the developer of the software for Colonize Epolis, and she every year she hosts this challenge for high school students to win a scholarship. And so there are different rules every year, but it's basically whoever levels the fastest or has the most farms the most cryptocurrency for their outposts, and while at the same time they have to fight off predators as they level up their outposts. And so it's there's more going on than just visiting the sci-fi land. There's also this challenge going on.
Yeah, I do this, David, and I apologize because I do this with every author that tells me their story, whether they're writing comics or not. But I'm like, I see the story that you're not telling me. Because I'm like, I can see this where it's like, it's a contest to get in here and, it's a video game, do as much as this you can. And they don't know that they're mining cryptocurrency for the guy who owns the game. And, they're like, slaves for him in a sense.
That would be one way to go. In this case, they do know. I mean, part of the experiment with these three worlds is to see how long people could play and live, and even if they could make money in these worlds, how sustainable it was, with the eventual goal of shutting these three worlds down and bringing up one core world that that they all could, that people could basically live in.
So I wondered about this with Sword Art Online when I was watching that as well, because this was the same kind of thing. They put on this unit, they're laying in a bed.
Yeah.
How long do your characters stay in this virtual environment? You have to sleep after so long.
So for my books, they're usually in there for a day. I mean, the high school students, they log in the morning, they log out in the evening. They're doing it over winter break, and they've got 4 weeks to accomplish this challenge, to finish the challenge, and that's it. Okay. But I do hint in the stories that there are that it can go on for longer. I mean, there are nanobots that take care of the body and keep you fed and take care of waste and and help maintain your health. So it is possible for it to last longer. And that might be addressed in later on in the series.
Okay, but you saying that they go in and they log out at the end of the day. This lit RPG merge. I'm crossing the streams, Egon. This kind of lit RPG, it does phase back and forth between real world, game world, real world, game world.
Mine does, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You said you play a lot of games, and you mentioned a couple of different titles that I don't know, and some of them I do. Do you play with the AR goggles, the augmented reality things? Yeah, this is here we go. Yeah, this is you don't look cool unless you're Geordie LaForge.
Yeah, I won't put it on right now. I've actually got a Oculus Quest and a Valve Index, and they're great devices. I think they're a lot of people, some people disagree, but I think they are still the coming thing. To quote Briscoe County Jr. How's that for an obscure reference?
I barely remember that one.
But yeah, my wife and I were big fans. But there's limited. There aren't enough games to keep it going right now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you've got Half-Life Alyx, you've got Beat Saber. I mean, everybody's got a few favorites, and I'm sure that there are some that I just haven't seen yet. Some buddies and I played Arizona Sunshine, which is a zombie killing game for a long time. And there is also Star Trek Bridge Crew, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But
how is it on the eyes, though? I mean, because your eyes, you feel like you're focused on a distance, but you're not. You're focused right here in front of you.
It's fine. I've never had any issue, but that's me. Some people, it makes them sick right away.
Yeah. I had so many hopes for AR, not the VR, but the AR.
Yeah.
When Pokemon Go came out, because they're like, oh, this is cool. Look at little Pokemon, and it's still everything you're seeing through your camera. And I was like, I want to mount my camera to the windshield of my car now and have AR Mario Kart and just drive and throw turtles.
That sounds like a terrible idea. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, well, it could be interesting because Apple's coming out with an AR VR device soon, and it is going to be heavy AR. So they're leaning on that a lot.
Yeah, and anytime there's a new AI or AR that's free, I play around with it. This replica thing that came out, I tried that for a while because it was like, hey, look, you can make a friend and you can stand her. Oh, I said too much already. They're in a place in your room and you can talk to her literally, verbally back and forth.
Well, wait till they tie that into Chat GPT. Then that's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was an okay conversationalist for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then things started to come back and repeat. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's me, but I think it's you.
and that technology is coming too. I mean, there have been a number of movies about it, and I think it's fascinating, good, bad, scary, a little indifferent,
Her was one of my favorites. I love that movie.
Yes.
So when the AIs start getting into the game, who wins? I mean, what if they choose to compete?
I think that's where you have to exercise the laws of robotics by Isaac Asimov and make sure that they behave.
Yeah, it's and we're not doing that. I mean, you might have seen the news that the first headline was that hey, San Francisco police are creating robots to go out and shoot people, and like they're doing what? Like, no, they're not going out and shooting people. They're blowing things up.
Oh,
that's not better.
Yeah, I remember a while back, and this is like not a great reliable memory, but that Facebook had some AI projects, and 2 of them were communicating in a language that nobody understood. Now that's not frightening. And they're like, oh, there's nothing to worry about. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes me comfortable. Thanks, Facebook.
Yeah, but we disconnected it.
yeah, exactly. Which is what they did. So, yeah, some of this stuff you got to be a little careful with.
Oh, what was the we it's not like we haven't been warned. The 1,000 names of God, I think, was out there as a cautionary warning.
Well, how about would you like to play a game? I mean, it's been around since war games.
Yeah, and then there's of course the old military joke where the general is brought in to see the new computer that had just been turned on, and he's like, how much is 80 times 80, and the computer spit out the right answer, which I can't. And he said, what's the 4 stars itinerary for today? And the computer said he's going to be here at this time. He's going to be here at this time. Where's the president right now? 17th hole of the golf course. And the general's laughing. He's like, oh, this thing's great. He's like, hey, is there a God? And the computer whirred and beeped and thought for a second, said, there is now.
There's a great story by Isaac Asimov called The Ultimate Computer, and I won't get into it, but it's worth checking out.
I'll check it out. I love those things.
Yeah, I'm an Asimov fan, and so it goes into that just a little bit.
So Watson's Worlds, it's the same world. It's our world, near future, different games. Are the characters recurring, or is it
so
connected
far
by the game system rather than the players?
So far, both books are standalone with unique characters in each one of them. There are a few characters that show up in both books, but you don't have to read one without, and then before you read the other one. I mean, you can read book 2 all by itself, and if you read book 1, you'll recognize a few of the characters.
Okay. Is your set of characters more of a team, or do you have
in the first book there was a main character and well, 2 main characters, Ian and Julie, and then in the second book there are 3 friends, Jake, Emma, and God, my brain, it's getting late for me. Jake, Emma, and Reed are the 3 main characters in the second book, and they're the high school students in the challenge.
I've got to get these books and add them to my collection because, first of all, I'm a sucker for portal stories ever since Alice in Wonderland and Narnia.
Right.
So you go through something and you're somewhere else. That's why I never missed, God help me, an episode of Puff and Stuff growing up.
Okay, that's dating yourself. Now you're. And the fact that I know what it is, we're both officially old.
Well, do you remember Lidsville?
No.
Okay, Lidsville was Eddie Munster, Butch Patrick,
okay,
a little bit older as a teenager, and Charles Nelson Riley as an evil magician, and he sees him at a circus doing his magic, gets curious about it, goes behind the stage, looks into the magician's magic top hat. And then the hat gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and he falls into it's Sid and Marty Krofft still, and falls in and lands in Lidsville, which is nothing but a bunch of different hats with legs.
Clever,
like a pith helmet with glasses on the top and a British accent. Yeah, it was nightmare material, but I watched.
Which while we're talking about portals, I did play around a little bit with some horrific elements in Colonize Epolis. I wouldn't call it a horror story per se. I think horror is a subjective term. I mean, my daughter couldn't get past the first chapter, but she can't stand horror. My wife, who doesn't really like horror, didn't have a problem reading the whole thing. But there were some elements, and that was fun.
Well, I was going to say, there's more than 2 worlds, one hopes, in this series, and 5 Nights at Freddy's is a thing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
So that's there's potential. That's the beauty of this new series you're doing here, is that with Angst, it was progressing the story, but it was going to be the same genre every time. Here it's the same series, but it can be anything at any time.
Absolutely, and it could be different games too. The first one was fantasy. This one's a town building game. Who knows what the next one will be?
I challenge you to make an interesting novel out of Candy Crush.
No, you win. You automatically win. I just lost that challenge.
Okay, I was just throwing it out there.
But I'm surprised they haven't made a movie yet. They tend to do that with IPs like that.
Give them time. That's a game that's played by bored adults with time on their hands. And I don't know, if I were to write it, it would be like subliminal mesmerizing, the whole thing. It's the patterns and the flashing and all that. It's putting a code in your heads. And the longer you play it, Okay, well, I think we can write this now, Dave.
Now that's a story. That is a scary story, but that's definitely a story.
You had a chapter set aside here. Did you want to give the viewers a bit of
I think I'll it's chapter 6, and it's very short, page and a half, but I it's been a while since I read it, but if I remember it being kind of funny, so I thought I would give this a try. It's chapter 6, Dead Stick Plunge. Jake's dropship didn't just drop, it rocketed towards Epples. His teeth vibrated in time with the walls until the ship hit atmosphere and everything began shaking like a paint mixer. Push the red button to slow your descent. The stiff female voice came from somewhere between his ears, a little disturbing but surprisingly clear over the constant roar around him. There was a rectangular panel over the window attached with heavy bolts like a bad aftermarket add-on. It contained an array of colorful buttons, including a red one in the center that blinked more frantically than the others. The ship shook one way, his hand shook the other, and it took effort not to smash them all. He pushed the button and nothing happened. There was no announcement from the voice in his head. His ship didn't slow, and the button flashed like he hadn't pressed it. He tried again and again, like he was trying to make an elevator show up faster. You have 30 seconds to push the red button, or you will take fall damage on landing. I'm pushing the damn button. Beating the button into submission with a finger didn't work. He balled up a fist and gave it a technical tap, and then another. The ship continued rocketing towards Epples, so he struck it hard. A bolt popped out, releasing steam that filled the cabin with noxious scent of rotten eggs. The entire panel rattled as the 3 remaining bolts took turns inching their way to freedom. Oh, darn. Oh, darn. Oh, darn. Okay, it didn't say darn, but I don't know. YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
He reached up to hold the panel in place. The ship spat out another bolt like it tasted bad. He grabbed for it, and the panel swung open, vomiting cables onto his lap. At this speed, you have a 50% chance of survival. You'll find a flashing red button on a panel directly overhead. Press the button now. The heck with this. He hefted the mass of wires and tried shoving them back into the wall. No way I'm going to die in this soup can. The cables wouldn't fit, spilling over his hands like spaghetti. Another bolt was ready to shake free. He reached for it, and one thin wire snapped. Not good. He jerked his hand free, breaking several more wires. A warning alarm screamed as the ship sped up. Your descent is quite fast. Candidates only start with 3 no-cost resurrections. Would you like to use one of the resurrections upon arrival? He stopped struggling and stared out the window. You're kidding me. I'm not even dead yet. Brace for impact. Oh, this is some bull. Pedestrians at Knossos Station all stopped to look up at the ship screaming through the atmosphere. Several raised a hand to protect their eyes from the sun, their heads bowing slowly as they watched the dropship speed towards the surface in a Roman candle blaze. Thud. Most winced, others shook their heads, and someone muttered a heh. The moment passed, and they all returned to the business as if nothing had happened.
Just another newbie that died on arrival.
Pretty much. Yeah, you know what? I did not prepare myself well for that reading. It's a little dark in here, so I'm like squinting and I have my old man eyes going. But yeah, it was it was not a good introduction to the game for Jake.
I can tell. I was waiting for him to like this. Oh, there's another red button.
Yeah, there's a little bit of cursing, but like I said, I didn't know if yeah.
YouTube's gotten funny rules, but it's like last I heard was as long as there's no cursing in the first 8 seconds. I'm like, you've really got to want to do it.
Yeah, you err on the side of caution, you know.
Yeah. So thank you. I've already got 1 strike on my channel. It's a
Oops.
warning. It's a
Oh,
warning.
that's good. That's good.
It's and I still didn't deserve it. We played on Christmas Eve night. Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. I did it 2 years ago. It's a public domain movie. They stopped the stream, and I'm like,
Oh wow.
no, don't stop the stream. It's a public domain movie. And I brought it down. They put me back on. I put the movie back up. And then they gave me a warning for spam and deceptive practices. I'm like, I'm not really trying to make people think there's real Santa Claus. So I don't know why.
And that is why I'm not worried about AI taking over right away, because that's usually programs that are doing that as opposed to people.
Yeah. So it's a little stupid.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Sorry to hear.
It's a warning. It's, if I don't do anything in the next 90 days, I'm fine. And I don't
So I'm glad I behaved myself then.
I've dropped bombs on here before. They don't seem to cause any kind of effect. All it does is affect advertising. It doesn't give you a strike.
Well, I don't want to hurt that either.
Well, I am monetized, and
which is great. I've got a ways to go for my channel. I haven't made enough videos yet, so I don't have the hours watched.
You got to get the hours watched. I just started doing marathons. Like I'm here every night, and then I was like, I got nothing better to do on a Saturday now. Who wants to have an hour of my day? And I did a 14-hour day.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, ouch.
Just one after the other. It was fun. I would never do it again. But
good for you. God, that reminds me when they came out with the first Avengers movie, going to the theater and watching all of them back to back in the theater in one sitting. Yeah, that was
real fun.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun. But yeah, I would never do that again.
I've gotten to the point now where there are Marvel movies I have not seen yet.
Yeah, me too. Well, some of them aren't that great. Like we started watching, I think, the Eternals, and I didn't finish it, and it's unfortunate because I'm like, you've got these great characters. What happened? What happened to the right? And it's just the writing is off on some of them.
And it threw me a lot because I'm like, who was the character who was the speedster?
In which one? Like in the Avengers movies?
In the Eternals.
I don't remember. I know who you're talking about, but and
I'm like, I was watching the whole thing. It's like, oh, she's deaf, and she has her friend who's also an Eternal, and they're the ones who communicate with American Sign Language thousands of years before ASL was ever invented. But
as one does.
Give it to the movie. And then you find out what everything's about. I'm like, oh, they were created artificially by this greater being. Like, wait a second. Why would a greater being intentionally make you deaf and have your job be harder?
That's a very good question. Yeah. I also think they've spread themselves a little bit thin. They've had the Marvel TV shows, which we watched WandaVision. We liked it better than we had, expected to.
I enjoyed the DVDs of those. I don't have Disney Plus.
And check out Moon Knight. I thought Moon Knight was kind of cool.
I heard mixed things on Moon Knight, but the people who liked it really liked it.
I thought the concept was great. It was a little bit of a different spin. They needed more Moon Knight in Moon Knight, but it was definitely different.
Yeah, and that's why I haven't seen Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness yet, because I haven't seen WandaVision, which apparently is a prerequisite.
It is, which I think is a mistake.
And apparently watching Loki is going to be a prerequisite for Quantumania.
Oh, good. Because I haven't watched that yet. Well, now thank you for letting me know, because now I need to.
Now you need to, because the Kang, and this is not a spoiler.
Dynasty.
It's in the trailer. The Kang character is getting tweets from Miss Minutes, who is a character in the Loki thing, because it's a time thing. That's all.
Which reminds me, so there's the What If cartoon series, which I thought was excellent, and watch them in order back to back, and you will see references to that in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, everything's built on the stuff that was on the television show. I'm like,
yeah.
If it was built on the Spider-Man movie, I could have worked with that because I saw that.
Right?
And I think the only thing they missed in Spider-Man, the No Way Home, I
Oh,
loved
yeah.
the end. I loved the ending when they had
J.
I can't
Jonah
remember.
Jameson.
Well, that ending there too, where the ending. Well, no, that was the ending of the first one, where he revealed the identity. Or you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about the one where they brought in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield.
Right.
Because he did reveal the identity. He's like, I've got to change the world around.
That's right.
And it ended with Venom, because they didn't show Tom Hardy throughout the whole film. He was the only
Oh, that's a
villain.
good point.
But I thought, wouldn't it have been cool if, just in passing, we had Nicholas Hammond?
No, that would have been cool. That would have been cool.
Because he got left out.
Did they have him in the cartoon with Miles Morales?
I don't think so.
Okay, because they had a lot of different Spider-Men in that one, and
yeah, and they'll have him in the next one too.
Yeah, which I enjoyed the first one of. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm enough of a geek where I'm like, if somebody is still around, use them in some capacity.
Yeah,
I thought the Tim Burton Batman missed the mark in a huge way by not having Adam West play Thomas Wayne.
Sure.
I thought that would have been perfect.
But on the flip side, I always thought it was cool that they had Lou Ferrigno in the Hulk movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marvel did it right. Yeah. And we always loved the fact that Stan Lee was cameoing in all the films.
Yeah.
But when it got to the point where we realized he's the same guy in all the films, he's, with the Watchers, and he's one of these celestial beings. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool? And unfortunately he died. And secondly, no one was going to write my idea.
And Marvel doesn't call me back either.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if, Infinity War, if Endgame was resolved by Stan Lee stepping in saying, okay, I'm going to fix this. And he ends up being the one above all. And Stan Lee
like a Beyond
creates. Yeah. Yeah. Cause Marvel has the one above all that we never know who it is. It's, this bigger than eternity, bigger than all the other ones. They can't say God. But if they just had him snap with the glove and had a mind big enough to fix a whole universe and put things back, it would be Stan Lee creating the Marvel universe with mutants and explorers and enough to bring in X-Men and Fantastic Four and all that stuff.
Reminds me, I wish I had it in my hand, but my daughter's boyfriend, he's into 3D printing, and he 3D prints Christmas gifts for everybody. And he made me the coolest arc reactor from the Iron Man movies. It is just fantastic.
Does it light up?
I had to shout that out because I thought that was fun.
3D printing is another one of those technologies that's just, well, that's how we met.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because my friend Christy was getting scanned for a 3D print, and somebody actually did get. I did not get the files or the little figure. We have a friend from cons that actually did get a little figure, and he's like the only one, so it's quite the collector's item.
I got mine. I have no idea where it is now. It got put away somewhere, and I never knew where it was. But you saw it at the con. It was one piece. I took it to somebody had it painted, and it was great. It was like a little RJ. I did videos with the things. Like I would talk, but I would be focused in on little RJ, looking at the comic book, and then looking.
Oh, that's funny.
I had a lot of fun with that thing. Now I gotta find somebody else that does it at another con. I guess I've never seen anybody else do that.
No, well, I think there's a reason that I think they took on too much, and that's why it didn't work out.
Yeah, they were very, very popular, and the machines were way, way too slow. They would need a bank of machines.
There was a company that we went to here in town that had it was a cage, and that had hundreds of really nice, expensive cameras that they used to create a 3D image. This was like 5 years ago, and it was really impressive with what they made. And but it was by the time, but the file it created, which they gave me, was so big, I almost couldn't do anything with it. I
Yeah.
I think it would be different now, but I'm not really doing cons anymore, so it's not as important.
Does not doing cons has that impacted your sales? Because you were selling out a lot.
Yeah, no. I got to the point that we had cons down pretty well for what for sales, and I love them. I mean, I love meeting people, and there are people like you who I've known for years because of cons. So I've made a lot of friends, and so I miss that. But at the same time, I with Entriss, I switched my focus to selling ebooks, and it on Amazon, it did better than any book I've written so far. It ranked higher than any book I've written, and for a longer period of time. So, I mean, yeah, and the sales are still good, but it's still not the same, and it's not as personal, and I miss that.
Yeah, I've been to one con in the last. Well, I did go back to Archon.
Okay,
The
yeah,
one con. And I was on a bunch of panels there. I didn't get a table, and of course, I had all these books with me, so I just set them up at whatever panel I was at, and because I had we did The Devil You Know Better, which was our not a sequel, but the next one. We're going to do The Devil You Know Best, but we're going to take a break first. We're going to do The Monsters Next Door, which
excellent.
if you want to do the Addams Family, the Munsters, Cthulhu, Summer Home, it's always an open genre kind of thing with, as long as you stick with the theme of the title of the book. But we
Yeah,
did a hardcover of that one, and it was crowdfunded. We crowdfunded a whole 10. I'm like, well, I'm going to print 25, and then everybody's going to get a 1 of 25, 2 of 25. They were numbered. They were signed by Mike Barron and Hart Fisher.
Oh, very cool.
So I've still got, about 12 of those things left. Sold some at the con. I thought next year I'll get a table. I was going to go to NWA Con next week, Northwest Arkansas Con. What are you guys thinking? But I looked at the guest list. I was like, it's NWA Comic Con, and there was not a single comic creator there on the guest list.
Interesting.
It was all voice actors and professional wrestlers, and a couple of actors. I'm like,
Isn't that interesting? The professional wrestler thing that happened to a con in Kansas City. And it drew a crowd, but I was like, do these connect? Yeah, thinking of cons, I went to 2 this last year. So I go to DemiCon up in Des Moines, Iowa. And I go to that one every year to see friends. And I don't have a booth or anything. It's just for fun and to drink.
Yeah.
And then I go to the last year I went to SoonerCon, which is the first con I'd really been to. I went to do panels and to talk to people. And I didn't have a booth, so I didn't go to sell books, but I brought some. And a young man came to me after one of the panels. He said, "Are you the author of Angst?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." And he's like, "Well, I've been looking for your booth, and I couldn't find it, and I'd like to buy the rest of the series. I bought the first book 2 years ago." And I said, "Well, I've got him in the car. Let's meet up after my next panel." So we did, and on the way to the car, I was like trying to make small talk. I'm like, "So, you like the book?" He said, "Yeah, I've read it 6 times." I was like, "Thank you very much." and so yeah, that was touching, and that's what I love about cons. That kind of connection that you don't get on the internet.
Yeah, I've got to introduce you to a guy. You probably already know him, Jason Hunt. You saw the Sci-Fi for Me promo at the beginning.
I think I haven't met him. I don't think, but I'm familiar.
You guys are you can probably meet at the same McDonald's, because I know you're in the same you're in the same town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, unless you've moved. Yeah.
No, I'm still here.
That's where he is. So
okay,
I'm like,
interesting.
how have these guys not crossed paths, being in the traveling the same circles and all that? So I told him before, you got to get this guy on your show and talk about his book. Now that you got a new one, I'll tell him again.
Well, I'm happy to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm always happy to have someone on the show, but especially people that are friends of mine that I haven't seen in ages.
We well, I am now writing full time, and that which is a huge change. And I have actually scheduled my next book with my editor this summer, so we may be talking even sooner.
Good. So okay, this takes me back to one of my first Critical Blast interviews that I did. First, folks, if you travel back through the list on this channel, you will find this interview that I did at Archon with Harlan Ellison.
Oh yeah.
And I asked him, I said, you've got so much stuff that you've written, how did you find the time to do all this? Which was hastily written, stupid question. So he told me that's a stupid question.
Thank you.
Harlan Ellison. And I thought for years, I'm like, if I could ever just quantum leap myself back into my own body,
Yeah.
I would say, here's the question that I'm going to give David, because now you're a full-time writer. With the quantity that you produced and the years that you put into it, what time management skills would you pass on to would-be writers so that they can match that kind of output?
Right. I mean, it's that simple. You got to sit down and write. I've talked to others who want to write, and they'll spend time watching videos on how to write or reading books on how to write, and
Videos about
that
cats.
and some of that is good and important, but really you don't get the book written if you don't write it. And so even, I mean, with when I wrote Colonize Epiles, I wrote the first third of it, and then I had a lot of stuff that happened because of work that the second third of the book took a lot of time, and then it came around that it was time to finish it. And so the last third of the book, I wrote about 2,500 words a day, which for me is a lot, especially, I've got my Parkinson's and I keep an odd schedule because of that.
You're handling it well, by the way. I mean,
thank you.
I know a couple people with Parkinson's, and in fact, I don't want one of these from you, but I have a topless photo here of Valerie Perrine, who is struggling with Parkinson's right now. We talked with Stacy Souther, who's her agent and everything, and who did a movie, ValerieTheMovie.com, which shows her today, and it just basically is her biography and details what she's struggling with.
Yeah, it's not fun. Don't get it.
Yeah, I'm skipping it. Thanks.
I'm
bypassing the entire death thing entirely. In fact,
the one thing is, if I gave you a topless photo, it would be like this. So it would be all shaky and blurry, so you wouldn't really see anything.
Oh, that would be a good thing. Good. But yeah, you're doing well. I'm glad to see that.
Thank you so much. But yeah, it's just sticking to the story, and there are all sorts of ways to keep making progress if you get stuck, and but writing and more writing is what gets the book done. Angst took me like 2 years to write because I was working full time and I had young kids, and I had demands, but I would go and sneak away to a coffee shop like a writer does sometimes, put on headphones so I wouldn't have to listen to the chatter, and I would take an hour or two and kick it out until I couldn't anymore, and then I'd go back another day.
There's a lot of self-control that has to be involved because there's this thing called the internet, and it's just a click away.
That's why it's good to step away. I mean, it's so important. I had mentioned before we started that I had built out a friend of mine and I had built out a YouTube studio. And I find that if I go up there, because like right here is where I play video games. I also write, but it's very easy to go, I'll write later.
Exactly.
And up there, I bring my Mac up there and there is no video games. It's just, so if you remove yourself from that, I mean, then you don't have to self-control anything, fortunately.
I used to have a PC, and this dates you. I used to have a PC that said, I don't want a modem in it.
I've had those.
Because I just wanted to turn it on and not have that opportunity to do anything but write on it.
Yeah.
rule of thumb I've always heard has been 1,000 words a day. You can get 1,000 words a day. You can consider that you did something right.
I think that's a very good goal. But some days I write 250 words. Don't feel bad about that. If you write words, you get it down on paper or type it out or whatever, you've accomplished something. There are some people who can write 10,000 words a day. Yeah, that's not me.
No.
The most I've hit is 3,200, and I felt pretty darn good about that, but I was also spent by the end of it.
Yeah. Very, very few times can I do that. I think I wrote one short story about that size, and it was isn't it wonderful when you can sit down and it just kind of falls out?
Yes, that doesn't happen every day, unfortunately.
No, it only happened to me one time, and it was there was a conversation happening on some writers forum, Zoetrope, the Coppola site where everybody was a slush editor, and people were talking about Nicolas Cage, and finally somebody said, "Why are we talking about Nicolas Cage on the writer site? Does somebody have a story about Nicolas Cage?" I'm like, "Well, not yet." And I could not sleep that night because I lay there staring at the ceiling, and the whole story was in my head. And I got to work early the next day. I didn't have a Word document. I opened up the submission form, typed it directly into the submission form where you put these things, hit it, and it was like one of the most read stories of that month. And it was a story called Nicolas Cage. and it was Santa Claus, who was being eternally punished for some horrible sin. And you know, every year he had to be dragged out of his ice cage and thrown onto a sleigh where he had to, you know, serve penance by begging children forgiveness. But guess what? They'll never see you.
That's funny.
It was kind of creepy too. Anyway,
you know. And Santa Claus stories should be
in here. Yes, they should be. I mean, he sees you when you're sleeping.
I've been told to stop doing that, so you know,
I
know, I understand.
I do it a lot. You know, sometimes that drool on your pillow, it's not always yours. David, thank you so much for coming on tonight, man. It's been a pleasure talking with you again. And,
it's so good to hear from you and to speak with you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And you know, if you're going to be on a regular schedule now, where you're going to be you know, doing more, then come back every single time. I want you here for every single book.
I would love that. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here tonight. We don't have a show without you. We're just a podcast falling in the woods otherwise. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. Good night.